Is there any other old business? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business, and our agenda item is resort tax legislation discussion. This stems from our resort tax summit meeting, and I think Ron's presentation is a good segue into the topic. For members of the public that were not at the summit meeting that we held on November 30th here, we were approached by some of the other resort tax districts and communities about working on legislation this session to get a % increase for infrastructure. That is what we were approached on, and so specifically West Yellowstone said that they had funds already committed and set aside. Virginia City was interested in it. We've been circled back with Gardner, who's asking for some information on the funding side of things. This is just a discussion item today. There will be no action, so I will throw that out for the board for discussion.
Talk about yourself. So politically charged. This whole 1%.
I'm just saying, I don't know. I think it was been made critically. Charged. This is about a tool in the toolbox, no different than bonding. Let me read you something that was this is from 1991, a letter to the representative Ted Scheib from Glasgow, Montana, but it was talking about the tax. And this says, bear in mind, you are not approving a tax. You are giving our voters the opportunity to decide this for themselves. The West Yellowstone tax that everyone is familiar with has been voted down in 2 other communities. The citizens will decide what is best for their community. This was represented last time as a 30% increase. This bill is not a tax. How it is designed in, when there's going to be a referendum, which is how it's designed in each community. It can be anywhere from any fraction of a percent or not, and it can be even put down for specific uses. We have seen it the other day that Whitefish said that 65% had to go to infrastructure, 15% had to go to parks. But that was in their election. In general, you can't do those things. We're not sure yet. We're working on those to find out. But I think that statement in 91 is key to what it is today. We're talking about, then we were talking about going to 0, 3%. He said that would be as it's designed and what it can be used for. What it can be used for in this community is a little different than other communities because it was designed that way. We have all of these expenses coming down the road. Our community will have to decide how they want to pay for it. We saw different examples here. We know there's a resistance to putting it on property tax. The community would have a choice whether they're putting it on tourist also. But that's all their choice. This is only getting this community with all the expenses coming for this. We're in the same place we were when we got the 3%. We're short on funds to pay for everything we want to accomplish to make a difference of who we are. And it will take 2 major efforts. One, to design the bill so it can be voted on, and 2, design it so it has enough support. And that's not an easy thing in itself. If it was, as this letter says, it was voted down in other communities. They all look a little different. How much they give in property tax rebates, one way that they do it. Some others, as we did at the time, chose to say, we'll make sure that your property tax just don't grow as much to have the services you need. So I think it's still something that's worth doing, but I think that the community should get it behind saying, we will put a tool in the toolbox. And if you want to fight about it, let's fight about what's in the bill or the referendum, what's on the referendum, and then let people decide it and such. Let's not, for a myriad of reasons that many of them did not even apply to what this tax is giving you the right to vote on it. it is not a tax and such. If you want, you can say that, well, I think it is a tax because I'm gonna lose what I want. This isn't about what every individual wants. This is about what the community wants. And I'll leave it at that. I think that, West Yellowstone wants to, says they have 30,000 to help pay for it. Gardner has asked for what kind of contribution they want. We wouldn't have to go it alone expense-wise, but there's no doubt about it. We have as much infrastructure and monetary needs coming down the pipe as anyone, and we have a choice. Do we want to make it available so our community can move it away from property tax, solely on property tax, but that'll be a decision they make. We shouldn't even be in that argument right now. That argument comes down the road when the community starts doing it, and we're going to have through our hopefully envision process that something will come out of that. Will give us a little direction whether we should even go down that way. But if they think that's a good way to go. You can't go down it unless you have passed through the legislature.
And I should note, West Yellowstone, their city manager was trying to be here this morning. He was sick this morning and texted me early and said he couldn't make it. So.
Well, and I mean, just when you talk about the other communities that are looking into it, West Yellowstone and Gardner in particular are just getting hammered by visitation in the park. And so, clearly dealing with what they're dealing with, they see a need for more funding. And I think we're not too far away from that impact either. You can't listen to the presentation we just heard without understanding that there are significant financial needs coming down the pipe for this community. More money is always good. Just in terms of pursuing legislation, if we were to do anything like that, I remain opposed to anything that pre-designates what it's going for. I think that's silly. Things change, and when you bake pre-designations into legislation, that if you want to change, how you use that money, you've got to change legislation. I think any community needs more flexibility than that. So, again, given the needs that are booming around here, I see the opportunity to increase the resort tax from 3% to 4% as a good thing. To give us that option, and as Mike points out, it'd still be, have to be voted on around here. But I would be strongly opposed to anything that pre-designates it. I think that is just unnecessarily constraining, and I think anybody who goes along with that is someday, sooner or later, going to regret it. So that would be my counsel.
And all we know right now is what they said, which is infrastructure was the term that they used.
Anything is, I mean, infrastructure is in our ordinance, along with a whole bunch of other things, and I just like it to keep it that way. I mean, we can apply that discretion, and as time goes on, things do change.
Yeah.
But if we had more money to deal with, I think that, again, we've got some big needs.
The other thing I'll stress, there isn't even draft legislation
No,
for us to review and look at. It's just the concept.
Well, there is some legislation though that has been identified that is, the Pomachowski thing. I mean, well, I don't think it's been drafted yet, but
that's what
there is legislation that's going to take place or be attempted around resort tax. So, fasten your seatbelt. Here we go again.
I agree with Steve. I think we need to have maximum flexibility from year to year. We never know what new is going to come along. If we had 4%, then it'd be nice to be able to use all that 4% in ways that the community, that would support the community, whether it's infrastructure or other needs.
I think that's easy to say, but it is, if you leave it wide open for something a little more like infrastructure where we know where our costs are going and the community can even designate that in the referendum and such. We were taken to task by members of our community and then consequently by members of the legislature for how we spend our money on contemporary and challenged and said we were spending it illegally on things by a member of our community. It said that, you know, that it's supposed to be for emergency needs and such. He said, here's a letter to Senator Webb saying that we spend it on things like hockey, snowmobiling, weed control trails, children's skiing, music concerts, etc. At worst, none of these items are included in the authorizing legislation describing appropriation expenditures. If that is so the case, since the very beginning of the resort tax, we've spent it legally, but that's not the case because I can read it. I won't read it to you and stuff, but there's stuff from our attorneys and also that comes right out of the law saying that it's done for health and welfare. Welfare is determined by the community. And it's never been a problem. Any of those going, and ever since the advisory board had it, was there when they kind of looked at the county, some of those same things were funded and such. It creates a problem, you know, when they think, you know, that the legislators are much more in tune. It doesn't have to be specific infrastructure, but they'd much rather see it there because there's enough people that argue about some of the other places we spend it and such. I don't have a problem with the core. I'm just saying that it's a lot heavier lift than trying to get it for the things. Plus, it's just not us. The other districts, they largely spend theirs, you know, they branched out as they paid for infrastructure. You know, West Yellowstone now uses theirs for things like child care and such. Before it was only for roads and such. So, you know, if you just look at the history of all of them, what they're concerned on, all of them say they have an employee housing problem. They say they got a good water and sewer system, which sounds familiar in some respects. Specs to go before they can build that housing and such. You know, this bill, despite everyone's saying, you know, I know it was part of our problem because we didn't amend the title to it, paying for housing. This bill last time included community development and was discussed about what that meant, and it was in the committee and such, and it was defined more tightly around type of infrastructure and such. There's a better acceptance for that type of thing. You know, if you want to go for the forward, we're running the chance of not getting it through to even do what we really know we have coming down the pike here. The big dollars we're talking about are not about, you know, some of these other issues because we're taking good care of them. I think our community would hate to be without them as such because it wouldn't be the community we know it is. It wouldn't be the community that draws people here, both tourists and residents as such. So we can go that way if you want to go, but once again, that bill hasn't been drafted yet or anything. But I really think hard about it before you go down that road. And remember, we can write that in our legislation, but don't get it so that the other people can't get what they need to. This is for 10 communities.
And a couple quick data points, Steve, real quick before I go to your thoughts. There is no bill drafted, and so this would be, we're discussing what we want to see at the table on drafting that bill and continuing it through. I will also remind the new members of this board, the last time we worked on legislation, there were a minimum of 3 votes that this board went through as the legislation was drafted, and we actually had something to sink our teeth into. So we're kind of swinging at shadows a little bit right now without seeing a bill draft in front of us. So that's one thing, is that there's should be opportunities to look at things in black and white before we're fully committed. The second thing that I should have brought up initially was budget and what sort of dollars are we looking at if we were to join on with these other resort tax communities. Last time we spent $36,000, is that correct, Whitney?
Yes.
And we went at it alone on that. There's a perception out there that it was well north of 50. The confusion was 20 of that was for defensive lobbying. It was separate than the 36 offensive lobbying effort. So I put this is just my back of the envelope math saying if all the resort communities wanted to go about it and set ourselves up for success, we should have a $50,000 budget. And when I asked Whitney to track down for me is what would that look like prorated for our district, just based on our percentage of overall resort tax collections. And we're about 43% of the total, so 43 times 50 is 21.5. If you round up, let's just say we're looking at 25 grand is probably the commitment from this board. And as we've heard, West Yellowstone's already committed 30 and Arden's asking when else issue. So dollar figures. Steve, I interrupted you.
I was just going to observe that, in terms of the political viability of any of this stuff, I mean, it occurs at two levels. I mean, the first thing you got to do is you have to have something that can politically make it through the legislature. And, that's an interesting sausage factory. But then when you bring it back here, you have to have something that could be structured to be politically viable so that when it's voted on here, you can implement it. And I think we have learned over the years that those are two very different political environments. And you need to succeed in both if you're going to make any progress. So it requires a lot of careful thinking. There's no question about it.
Since you answered my budget question already, I have a couple of questions. Number one, this is obviously a discussion, we're not voting on it, but if we get to a point where, will we have opportunity to say we are done? We don't like what you're writing, or it doesn't fit with our needs. Are we committing ourselves to whatever our budget number is? But then if we don't like what's happening, can we still get out of it?
It's a great question, and I don't have, Wendy sent me the specifics, and I should know, but the way we structured the contract last time with the lobbyist was there were certain days and some payments being due, and we actually had some success fees factored in there. So if it passed the House, they were due some money. If it passed the Senate, they were due some money. I assume, to answer your question, Sarah, I don't assume we could draft a contract that here's, we're going to spend X amount of dollars to work on the drafting of the legislation. We're going to, and have it to where we're not fully committed on those funds, which I think would be a wise thing, since if we do pursue this, we don't even know what we're committed to at this stage.
Right, well, that's my concern, is we have no idea what West Yellowstone wants, we have no idea what Gardner wants. I'm hesitant to put money towards something that we don't have any idea on. I understand, I would like the opportunity to be able to say, okay, maybe we do want to get in the ring and have an opportunity to talk about it. But if we don't like what Gardner and West are wanting to do it for, being able to say, okay, we're not, this is not where we wanted to go. And then my next question is, it obviously, as we've talked about, was very political last time. Have we, or could we think about trying to create some type of community discussion on what are you interested in? Is that worth our time? I think it is, but I'm curious to hear what the rest of the board has to say. We're never going to make everybody happy, right? We're never going to make everybody happy, but being able to understand what is it that these different kind of community pieces are against, or what are they for? I know that we're elected by the people, but it's also nice to sometimes get a little bit more people involved.
I don't disagree. I also think that's a lot of the reasons why we public notice our meetings and try to get community input at these meetings. Buzz? Oh, I thought you had your hand up.
No, I was just thinking about how you engage.
Sarah has a point. I would say that certainly, I think there's one time when you get committed when you accept the draft of the bill, because you have a lobbyist working for you and they spend effort and you have a contract with them and such. Yeah. As far as, looking at the draft of the bill that comes out of all of the resort tax districts working on the combination stuff, that would be a time that if you want to decide whether you want to go forward with it or not. So it could be, we have so much for bill drafting, and at that time we have so much to commit if it does the purpose of what we have. Once again, the real detail comes later when you do the petition. Petition.
You don't know enough about the process.
The petition that the public will vote on, because that really defines the nuts and bolts of it, and they're going to look different in each community. It's just that, is it stay within what the law was, what is how it works and such, and that can convict. You can be very specific in it, or you can be just with giving areas and give the board more discretion as it goes down the way. That all depends on it. I think that a good thing about saying it's infrastructure and such, it really means that you're probably doing things that alleviates paying it all in property tax and such if it's something you can spend resort tax on that would have been property tax, then there is some gain for people in the community, and that also makes it look better than if you let it too big. It could be spent on things that wouldn't affect your property tax by one iota and such. I don't know if the community is anxious to add one on. They're giving that much leeway to it. I think they probably like to see some benefit on the property tax side. The same story Ron just got done telling us on, and it goes with the fire. How we do different things, but part of it's that definition of infrastructure, and that we came up against that, and it was kind of done in committee. It's nicer to do it when you're not standing and trying to figure it out in 5 minutes.
Well, supposedly one of the arguments that's already started in the state legislature before they convene the session is on the definition of infrastructure.
Which, by the way, I spent a lot of time last night trying to find a good definition of Montana Code advocated for infrastructure, and
Don't look there. Yeah.
I'm
there
encouraged.
isn't a great one.
But a lot of people want to tie various tax things to the idea of infrastructure, or an infrastructure funding bill, and the question is, what is infrastructure? So
We got through that last time. That means you just have to be smart about it. Once again, you don't want to give the loophole and sell anything to be attached to the infrastructure. That it doesn't have to be defined the way it is not in the law anywhere else. You just have to at least come to an agreement between resort tax. What kind of things do you want done with this money in the resort? Let's make sure that those are in the spectrum, and then everyone will decide that with their own ballot.
So it seems to me that we have two people who are monitoring the legislature right now, working with our lobbyists. It would make sense for those two to, you've heard our conversation. We understand that this is going to have to be structured in such a way that we can get it passed, and that means taking into consideration our local concerns. So is this something you guys would be willing to track as it develops? Or?
Well, just so
we're
we're
already
about
signed
I was
on.
going to say this would be more than tracking if
Yeah.
this board would go and be.
Right.
Hold that thought, because we're not taking action right now, but I do think that that's an interesting idea. I'd like to hear more board discussion, and if not, I'd like to open this up for public comment.
The last thing I guess I am interested in saying is it is encouraging that we are not the only people this time, right?
Right.
The last time it was Big Sky funded. I am encouraged to hear that there are other communities who are interested in putting forth monetary support.
Yeah,
because
I was going to say, to
that's-
clarify, last time everybody was in support.
Right.
We're the only ones writing
Monetary.
checks. Yeah.
Right, and so that is encouraging. I still have some concerns, but
Just kind of to Buzz's point, if to me, the difference that I foresee is if we're going to get involved in pursuing this as partners with others pursuing this, the essential part of that from my standpoint is we absolutely need to be involved in the drafting of this legislation. I mean, once that's drafted, it's on rails and it's headed somewhere. And if we want it done right from the perspective that we have of what is right, we absolutely gotta be at the table at that point.
Any other further thoughts from the board? I'll open it up for public discussion.
Kevin's looking at me, and Mike, thank you for reading my letter to him. Because, and I will say that I think I'm in relatively complete agreement with some of the thoughts Mike presented. Not that anyone should be shocked at that, especially.
I'm sorry, Dr. Shaw, can you introduce yourself for the purposes of the record?
Yeah, Alan Shaw, just a resident of Big Sky. And, I don't know what else to tell you. No, I'm still a doctor, but now I'm a fishing guy, which has been a great medical program. And many of you know that several of us were very instrumental in working on this the last session and had specific views about it. Mike related some of what we alluded to, and there's no purpose at all to get any kind of a controversial discussion of what transpired in the past. I have been in contact and been working with Dan from West, and I would agree with Mike, and Mike, please correct me if my interpretation of this is wrong, that this legislation should be, to be successful, fairly narrowly written and defined without any vagary, or words like other and at the discretion of. Those are things that get folks concerned. Coming up with a definition of infrastructure, I think that would not be difficult. I don't think it has to be in the code as much as talking to these other districts and see what their needs are. West is pretty much very dependent about what they want to use these money for. And I'd love to see us all work together on this and not create a big issue like we had in the last session. It was painful for everybody and time consuming and expensive. Certainly I would agree with Steve, if there's going to be legislation that this board and the other boards ought to be instrumental in constructing legislation so that it's compatible and feasible for passage. And I'm willing to help with it if it would be of any interest. I am working with the folks in the West, and you may want to see what they're going to write up versus as a director. I certainly don't think that it would be prudent for you to just accept what they do without your own input and the input from other boards. But see what they come up with before you allocate any money here, and then go forward with what you need to do after that. They're having a council meeting Tuesday that I'm probably going to attend if they request. And, I think they're just trying to, if you want to use a colloquialism, grease the skid, so to speak, to make this palatable to most folks that have an interest in it. So that's pretty much my thoughts. I would tell you that there are lots of folks in the community who would have the same objections going forward to legislation that was deemed to be too pervasive and not narrowly defined. So for what it's worth, not that you want to be hamstrung to using these monies only for certain things, but these things can always be changed. As Mike said, this is a community decision down the road. This is not determined by the legislation. Each community has to decide on this.
It still has to be within the law.
Right.
So if those things are defined in the law, how much you can do it, it all depends on, it does depend on the design. And to your point is, not everything that everyone thinks will be allowed in it, but just remember that if you're funding a number of things with this extra percent, it takes a little pressure off where you might be able to spend some other things where you need some money. It all goes back and forth, but it's going to be drafting the law so it's specific enough, yet broad enough for everyone, and yet making sure that everyone's petition stays within that and satisfies their own community and will be passed. As I said, there's a number of these that have gone down. Whitefish voted theirs down twice before they.
No, I know. One thing I would suggest, and I know it's not mandatory in this type of a resort tax situation here in Big Sky, is the property tax relief that has gone over very big in other districts. Even if it's just a gesture, these folks see a line item on their property tax bill that their tax is being reduced. And I've heard arguments here against that. They quote unquote, we're a wealthy community and people don't need that. There are lots of folks in this community, when you listen to Tom, They could use some property tax
Well,
relief.
there's a whole bunch of resort tax that already goes to property tax relief in the sense that we pay for stuff that otherwise would have to be paid.
Right,
for
but that
property
Steve
taxes.
doesn't show up on a tax.
I understand, but again, we certainly do that.
But Alan's point is, that could go on this 1%.
Right.
It's not-
And it
but you're
would
not
make
gonna-
it, I think it would make it a little more.
The only way to go back and put it on the 3% if you want it there is when the 2% gets up for election again. And because right now, it's not allowed, by, what the community voted on, that was not an expenditure at that time. It's written into the, incorporated cities, that because West Yellowstone first, it's 5%. We found out that Whitefish gives 25% back. And then they don't even do it prorated, they give it just equally to every property owner, which means that,
I think it's blatantly unfair, but
yeah, they're making sure that the people that vote get the most per capita.
if you do
return
go with
back.
the increase of it, it could be part of that. I mean, it's just a suggestion.
No, and that's to be decided when don't even have to discuss that now, because that's not what this is about. This is just right to try to
No, I
do
understand.
something later.
Just throwing out food for thought.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Taylor? I'm gonna put you on the spot. You're sitting here, I'm curious.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. Thanks for asking. First, I really applaud this board for getting serious over the last couple of years about collecting uncollected taxes within the scope of the existing law. I would propose that there's still work to be done for this board and this community in that arena. Let's collect all we can collect with the laws the way they're currently written. Second, a reminder of the fact, resort tax collections are growing by 15% a year for the last 5 years running. In 2013, we collected as a community $3.1 million. Last year, we collected $6.7 million. So the existing 3% tax is growing wonderfully, and those dollars are available for us in the community. I'm open-minded about this discussion, but those are facts we need to have into that. We need to take those into account in this open-minded consideration. We don't necessarily need to raise taxes, but it's probably a good discussion to have. Thank you for asking.
I'm curious.
What's interesting, I think, is this conversation with resort taxpayers is not happening in isolation in our state. On the state level, obviously, there are folks who are proposing a statewide tax that is not being taken very powerfully at the moment. However, other small communities have seen the success of our resort tax districts, such as Bozeman just down the street, Billings, and they are looking at local option sales tax. So, because the need for infrastructure in those communities with pressure being put on by our 12 million non-resident visitors who come to the state. So, I would encourage us to continue the conversation. To reiterate what Mike just said, it's putting a tool in our toolbox. As we talked with Ron this morning, he's showing the different types of bonds that are available. We talked about property tax, we have our resort tax, and I think we just need, moving forward, to have all the tools available to us, and it will be a local decision by our community in a vote. So I just think we need to keep our options open as we move forward. That's a personal statement, not reflective of my board or organization at this point.
Well, thank you, Bob. I put both of you on the spot here, but I appreciate your responses.
To Taylor's point, I think his points are well taken and such, but until we do the envisioning and know what we need in this community and how much money we have, that's when this community will decide, do they want to have a ballot on who raises or not. They might even at that point say, we don't need to. But without having the tool in the toolbox, we don't have the chance to make that decision when we go through all this visioning process and decide this is where we need to go, this is what it's going to cost or something like that. Without that tool, we won't be able to make that decision when we know what we're collecting and everything else is going on. It's all about getting that done. No different than it was when we first got it passed and such. You know, there was no guarantee it was going to get approved at the time. We only had 350 people voting then, not 91, but still, there was, you know, it didn't pass by 90% or anything like that. You never know, but you have to at least have the tool there. You know, most of us would agree that what the 3% has done for all these years makes this a remarkably better place to live and do business.
I just want to add one more thing, because we had a special session with the governor this past summer. And a number one target for him was to raise the lodging tax by 3% to go directly to the general fund. Those of you who attended the Eggs and Issues have heard from Dak Sheeper, Voices of Montana Tourism, that's 7% on lodging, 4% goes to the state tourism office, as well as our local Big Sky and the regions, etc., and some other small areas, and then that 3% goes to the general fund. He even proposed to make it 6% to the general fund, which would have brought us to a 10% lodging tax rate. And so that, as we move forward in legislative session, will come under pressure again to resolve other issues in our state budget. So I just would ask that we keep that in mind, because we may be coming back to you with our stance from the Big Sky and the Chamber on that issue, because that continually puts the burden on the lodging industry solely, who, when that legislation started in '87, voluntarily stepped up to make those vehicles happen. So I just would ask that we all keep an open mind with respect to that lodging tax, of looking for reaching out to a greater population to help support some of our efforts in the future.
Any other public comment? Any further board discussion?
If we are going to make a decision to do this, and it's not at this meeting, we probably need to have a special meeting to take care of it, unless we're going to do it in January. We're really a little behind the game.
No, I agree, and I was going to propose having a special meeting on this, because we can't wait till the January 9th regular scheduled meeting. And a further request is, I'll expand on where Buzz was going, is if it would be okay for Mike and Steve to work on a proposal that we could actually take action on at a special meeting. I'd be happy to work on that, but you two are already the subcommittee on legislative issues.
You've already laid it out. I mean, I don't know that,
I just think we need.
You scaled it it's in the neighborhood of a $25,000 commitment to participate in the lobbying that would be necessary to pursue this.
Well, what I heard from Sarah, and I think she's not alone in this, is there a way that we can step into this? Is there $5,000 that we could fund that would get us a bill draft? And then this board would then vote on, we don't want to endorse a bill we haven't even seen drafted. So I just a way to step into this.
Just so you're not calling special meetings every 5 days, we need to structure it so that if it attains this level, then, because the other people will want to know how we, once we get the bill draft, we signed off, are we committed to that level? But once again, that level also should be tiered so that we're not paying full bore to a lobbyist except on achievement. As the legislature has structured it last year when they gave it to us, we structured it so that we didn't have to pay.
Well, we also need to know what West Yellowstone is doing.
Yeah.
We're not going to hire 2 lobbyists to do this, right?
No. So
there would be some outreach with West and talking with those guys. So we have something more to sink our teeth into it.
Well, they may be driving the bus. I mean, they've already made the commitment themselves, so,
And driving the bus, but Dan said he was hoping to get a lot of support and information since we know a little.
And we should have that conversation with them. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I'll commit to, whenever you said it before that time, making an appointment, going to talk to Dan so that I can fill you in on that conversation.
What would be the date that we could have needing to take action on this?
Oh, Christmas is perfect, I think. Timing is just.
It would have to be next week. We're going to lose.
It's a week from today.
What I have a 9 to 10, I have a 12 to 1:30, 3, I could probably miss my 3 o'clock. Tomorrow's kind of, or a week from today is kind of tied up. Tuesday is better for me. And Friday is better for me. I could even do Monday.
I could do Wednesday.
I'd like a
When do we
little bit
need
of
for
time.
public notice?
Yeah,
At
I
least
know,
7
just-
days.
At least 7 days. Okay, so it would have to be Wednesday or after, and what I heard is Wednesday is not really good. Thursday, I would have to do late afternoon, Friday I'm wide open.
Friday I'm wide open, I could do late afternoon on Thursdays.
Sounds like it's Friday.
Are you
Friday
free?
the 21st at 8:30 a.m.
Is there any possible way to do it after 9:30? I have a commitment.
10 a.m.
Yeah.
10 a.m. Friday, 21st, 10 a.m. The board.
That works for me. Thank you.
Maybe, if it's all right, maybe also add to the agenda, the hiring
The
subcommittee.
hiring subcommittee. I was
Able to
taking notes.
hire.
Yeah, let's go ahead and we can take action on that at that meeting as well.
That you two can hire the
Yep.
administrative and the
Agreed.
If 10 a.m. works for everybody else. I know Whitney has to be in the same place as I do on Friday morning. I don't,
Thank you.
That works for me.
thank you.
Taylor, you're gonna have powder day. That day.
Yeah.
21st, it's gonna snow like, okay.
Let's call Dan.
Okay. I do have, moving on to next agenda item is other under new business. And I would like to have for discussion purposes and sending out an RFP for legal representation for our board. And I just added it to the agenda, and perhaps we can add this to as an action item at our next meeting, but I would just throw out there, I'd like to send the offer of legal representation to the board.
I drafted the RFP.
Okay.
I think it's great.
Okay. Can we add that as an action item at our special meeting? On
Yes.
the 21st? Great. Is there any public comment to close our open meeting?
Just with
Thank you for
regard,
all coming.
Go ahead.
we'll circulate the draft RFP around in advance of the next meeting.
Okay, and we have one from the last time we did this. So there's
And we don't, believe
We
it or not.
don't?
I know, it's strange, but we just
Oh.
took Mona's recommendations and reached out to them.
That was the fair, okay. All right, you have one you drafted. All right,
Look
Yeah.
forward to it. Thanks, Steve.
great.
Needs one more edit, but I'll send, Whitney can send it around.
Okay. Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to close our open meeting.
So moved.
Okay, we are gonna go into our closed meeting agenda, which for confidentiality purposes or on tax issues.